Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for parents going through the teenage years. I'm Rachel Richards, journalist, parenting coach, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist, musician and mother of 3 teenagers. 2 of them are twins.
Now, Susie, how do you feel about telling your kids about the sex, drugs and rock and roll in your past?
I'm not sure there was any.
Likewise. I've led quite it's been a flavourful past, but I didn't really push any of those boundaries too much. Well, we had a listener ask us to help her because when she was in her 20s, a man broke into her home and raped her.
Oh, golly.
Very, very traumatic.
Yes.
And it will have had a defining impact on her. And she's now has tweens, and she's beginning to think about how she should approach it with them. She's unusual because she's a public figure in her country, and what happened is actually on record.
Oh, wow.
So at some point, they may well stumble on that information. Regardless of whether she wants to tell them or not, this is out there. Right.
Yeah, so she feels like she wants to tell them before they read it, I guess.
Yeah, and so she wanted us to talk about this. I think it's an excellent topic to research because, look, there are a lot of parents who've done things like drugs, smoking, underage sex, theft. You name it.
It's a great topic.
They'll have had things done to them. So let's talk about this. First of all, let's talk about nuggets. And what have you got for us today?
Well, I have a lovely nugget, I think, which is, it was half term here last week. So it's just my twins at home now. One of my kids is at uni. And one of the twins was away on a school trip and the other one was not. So it was my daughter, and we went to Bruges for the weekend, just me and her.
Bruges is lovely.
Oh, it's so pretty. It's so lovely. And it was really lovely. I mean, we get on really well anyway, but we just kind of pootled around. It was so nice. And the nugget maybe is all of it, but it was... it was, we had dinner together and suddenly when you're on, we get on really well, but suddenly you're spending all your time together and doing things and eating, and all the meals is very different from rattling around at home together, isn't it? And so I said, at dinner tonight, I've got some questions. I'd found them online ages ago and had wanted to use them and had never done
That would strike fear into my heart as
really?
A teenager.
Oh, she was like, yeah.
Oh, great, okay.
No, she was like, I've seen some on TikTok too. Let's do that.
Brilliant.
So we had dinner and we asked each other questions, and it was so lovely. It was so much fun, like really random things and really personal things, and it was just really nice. So I highly recommend.
I love that.
And Google them.
Wow. and better because I did that with my teens when they turned double digits. And that was incredible. But what a lovely bonding experience to do that later. I did that with my daughter when she had just finished her GCSEs. So this in summer, this time last year, because mine are a year apart in school age. And it does. Your relationship has changed, and it's much more. It's lovely to do those gear shifts, even if you can't afford to go away. Just to do something where you shift gears and you go, well, we have a different relationship now.
Really
I love
nice
that. That's a good nugget.
Yeah,
love that one.
Thank you. She did my makeup one evening because I'm rubbish at it. And just stuff like that. And also she really likes history, but she's not. Doesn't want to spend too long. So we did lots of things quickly.
Great. Perfect. Right, so that's the church. Yeah. Okay, and that's...
Yeah, exactly, right. Now what? Waffles again.
So my nugget is actually, I was listening to a therapist called Laurie Gottlieb, and she was talking about people turning up to speak to her, particularly men, and telling her things that they thought were weird and shameful. And she says, the thing is, most people have experienced the things that they're talking about, but they don't know that that's normal until they come to me. And it made me think again about something that's been happening a lot with teens. When I talk to teenagers, I often find that when they say something to me or they ask me a question, what they really want to know is, am I normal?
Yes.
Am I weird? And because there's an awful lot on social media about being divergent in any way, you know, and they're all kind of figuring out their identities. Am I this? Am I that? Where do I sit in this? But I think the thing that really underpins all of this is, am I normal?
Yes.
And we know that normal is a very broad spectrum.
No one is.
No one's normal. And I think the thing we can do as parents is to be able to let our kids know that it's normal to think about a lot of the things that people think about.
Yeah.
And they're not broken, and they're not strange, and have those conversations with them. And when they tell you something, just actually say, that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I've had that thought, or, I know people generally think that.
Oh, I love that. That's brilliant. And I use that quite a lot with my clients, especially the teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They come thinking they've been told they've got anxiety and all of these things. And one of the first things I say to them is, having anxious thoughts is completely normal.
Yes.
You are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. And you just see their shoulders go, oh,
yes.
What a relief.
What's really vulnerable is one-to-one with someone you really care about, opening up about something you've been worrying about.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's one of those very special spaces that we can have with our kids, or, because I often think they don't talk about some of those very vulnerable things with their own friends because it feels too...
No, and they're often full of shame, aren't they, those things? And shame thrives in secrecy.
Yes, exactly. So coming back to this question about what we talk to our kids about, Georgina, I put this up on social media, and Georgina says that if it's going to help them, yes, of course, it's good to know that they're not the only one to feel that way, which is what we've just been saying. But she said, just you have to be selective. There are many things we do not want to know about our parents. I'm with you there, Georgina.
Yeah, 100%.
And Jeanette, actually, she was lovely. She said, look, I suffered domestic violence in a previous relationship. And she said her kids they haven't actually asked about it and about why she left her previous partner, but they're in contact with him. And she said, the thing is, I don't want to have any impact on their relationship, but if they did ask me, I think I would be honest about it. So it's a really interesting one. And I think she's not hiding, but what she's doing is she's been careful because she doesn't want to impact them in a way that wouldn't help them. And I think that's a really, really good way of jumping off into this topic, because the question is, why is this coming up? Why are we actually going to talk about this? And the most important factor is how we share that information. Now, have they asked? Because most of the time, the kids will come and ask you when they're ready.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what the topic is, doesn't it? Because there's the whole topic of, Mum, did you drink, do drugs?
Sure.
Do that kind of stuff as a kid. And then, but the topic you're talking about now, that's a relational thing that maybe is much more recent and is very different in nature. There are different topics.
Yes, they are. And I'll deal with the sort of the more serious things later in the episode. I think let's go over some of the stuff that is more common, which is, so, first of all, have the kids asked? If they've asked, it's not about you, really. They're actually asking because they're probably thinking about, how do I steer my way through this? Is it okay if I do this? They're going to be looking for information.
Yes, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And they quite often it's that they see that you've got certain values and they're testing them. They're trying to say, well, you say that this is the way it is, but have you ever?
It's like a permission slip, isn't it? If you've done it, then I can.
Well, to an extent, and it's not about you. It's literally, if they ask you this question, it can be, because what often they're trying to do is they're trying to connect with you. You are their parents are the most important people in their lives. And so they will want to, there's a point at which they're trying to connect more with you, trying to understand you. Like, how did you get where you are? They can't ask a lot of these questions of other adults, right? Because they can ask their mates, but their mates only know what they know when they know it, or what they're getting from social media. What they can't get is from other adults, unless there are other adults. Yes. Okay, so the question you've got to think is, what's most beneficial or important for my kids to know? What details might be inappropriate or scary or too personal? And are there things I just don't want them to know? And these are things to think about before it crops up. So my point is, if you have a set of values and then you think, actually, I didn't really do those things when I was young, like I used to smoke, or I was a real heavy drinker, whatever it was, that is a thing that you did. And so the thing to do is think about, at what point would I tell them and what would I tell them? And do it ahead of time. So you don't have to struggle when they first ask you, because they probably will.
Yeah, they probably will. But don't lie, because that's going to always come out eventually, and then that's really bad.
100%.
Yeah.
Honesty is absolutely critical. They have a bullshit radar.
They do, and they'll find out, and then your trust is tricky.
Yes. And they're looking for data points. They want to know, do your current rules and values match up? And it's okay if they don't, they're not the same, right? Because what you can do is how you explain the world to them.
Yeah.
Each child is different. You may not be able to do it with both kids at the same time. You're not going to sit down and have some conference about it, or you might, but you'll find that it will come at different stages, and it depends on the child.
Yeah, I think I've been asked questions like that with everybody, and then having to filter the response.
Depending.
Yes,
thinking, interesting.
The younger one is listening. It does make a difference.
It does make a difference, right? And there's a good joke about a little girl who comes home one day and says to her mother, Sarah told me where she came from. And the mother, thinking her daughter is referring to how babies are made, launches into an elaborate discussion of sex and reproduction. And the girl, with her jaw dropped, says, Mummy, Sarah came from Australia. So the point is, you kind of have to know what they're actually asking.
Yes.
All right? Don't assume that when they're asking you a question that you really know why. So just being curious.
Yeah.
We talked about this before, the curiosity over the judgment.
Ask a question back.
Ask a question back, because that can stall it a little bit. But don't look like you're stalling. Just be genuinely interested. So you can say, I'm so impressed that you're thinking about these issues. You can compliment them on it, and then say, what made you think about this right now? Do you think about, do they actually want chapter and verse, or is this just an idle question that's popped into their head? Are they looking for rules? Are they looking to connect? So try and suss out what it is they're looking for before you start launching into any of this, because you don't want to over deliver, and then answer the question directly, because it demonstrates respect for them. If you say, so here's the answer to that, with whatever you're prepared to say.
Yeah.
And what it does is it teaches them to be open and to trust us. When don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. I think the trust is everything.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean we can't filter out the replies. But trusting is absolutely crucial.
So each time they ask you a question like this, what they're really saying is, can I come to you and ask you things that maybe are a bit awkward? I mean, my kids have asked me some very awkward things. And, and I've delivered the goods, because I've said to them, I will always answer your questions. I may not give you the detail that you think you deserve, because there's a generational barrier, and I'm your mother, and some things wouldn't be appropriate, but I will definitely answer your question as honestly as I see fit.
I think the one where I think it's difficult is if they ask about drugs and things like that. And if you have done a lot of drugs and obviously think maybe that wasn't a great idea, or you don't want your kids to, because I do think things like that, we've talked about this before in other episodes, it is a little bit permission slippy.
Yes, absolutely.
And when they are faced over a decision, whether to or not, because they will be offered, at the back of their mind, if they know that we did, then they're way more likely to go, oh, Mum did, it must be all right.
Yes, so she's fine.
That's the one where I go, ugh. Not that I particularly did at all, but if that is the case, and maybe alcohol's in the same bracket, but it's not quite as...
Well, I'd like to address that. I think it's really good that you raised that, because first of all, we did do an episode on drugs. If this is something you will be touched with, definitely listen to the episode, because we spent a lot of time talking and thinking about this. But parents' hands are tied. If you lie, you put your entire relationship on the line. If you come clean, you run the risk of showing your kid that it's fine to try these things. So here's what I was thinking about this, because President Obama had a conversation with a group of at-risk kids in Chicago about his drug use.
Okay.
And he explained to them that when he was their age, he didn't have a dad in his house. He was angry about it. And he didn't realize it at the time, but he made some really bad choices. And so it's not the doing thing so much as what we think about what we did and why we did it. and how we process it now.
Yes.
So I think if you're going to go there and say, yeah, I tried drugs, you need to frame it in a way that makes it clear that that was not like I'm, just go and have a fun time. And an interesting one that we did actually mention in the drugs episode was that drugs have changed significantly.
Yes, they're much
so
stronger
the strength, exactly, strength of marijuana is much more potent than it was in the 70s. There's fentanyl in drugs now. These they don't know necessarily what they're getting.
No, it's very different. Yeah,
and so I really think we need to. I think it's brilliant that you brought that up, because we need to frame it in a way where we can say it's not fair, but actually I look back. Okay, here's a great example. My daughter, I'm teaching her how to drive. And while we were driving, we were picking up speed. We'd got to 30 miles an hour in this area, which is an open road. And I said to her, anyone can drive it fast. It's actually navigating around the small country lanes and the parked cars and everything. And then I stopped and I said, I'm going to tell you a story. When I had learnt to drive, I had borrowed, my mother had this really underpowered van. It's a small van for delivering furniture. And I borrowed it because I'd had to run an errand. And I was on a Lincolnshire country road, which are super long and straight. And you can see for miles. And I decided I was going to overtake the car in front of me. So I pulled out, and this van just didn't accelerate. And it was just, and this car was coming right at me. And right at the last minute, I tucked back in, because there's a side of me that's like, I'm going to do it. And I tucked back in. And I said to her, I've never lost the fear that I had that day, where I thought, that could have been a different result. That was a really stupid thing to do.
Whoa.
So my point is, sometimes telling these stories can really help our kids. I can guarantee she's not going to actually pull out in an underpowered vehicle and try and overtake, because it can be really helpful to them to hear that you did some really stupid stuff, and you look back and think, oh, because I do. I remember it.
Yeah, no, it's a good, really good point.
And but there's a difference between being honest and being evasive, which is dangerous, because if they can tell you're being evasive, then they're going to think, oh, what's she not telling me? But you can delay.
Yeah.
You can delay. So you can say, do you know what? I don't really know how to explain or answer that question right now. Can we come back? Maybe can we talk tomorrow lunchtime? Or can we just say to them, it's not that I'm not going to talk to you about it, but I haven't really thought about it in a long time, and I'd like to think it through.
We have to be a bit careful, I guess, in that, because in their heads they're going, whoa, what did they do?
Absolutely.
What's the story they're trying to hide?
Yes, they will. They will think that. But the question is this more damaging than actually saying something to them that 100%. Isn't right? Yes. That's not quite. So there's that.
Yeah, having time to think is often a really valuable thing to choose.
And also what you're doing is you're teaching your kids that this is what they can do.
Yeah.
So, we're living in this culture where I talk to my kids about this all the time, where as soon as they've opened a message, they have to respond. Yeah. And I keep saying, no, you don't. And they said, no, you don't understand. You do not understand, Mum. And I keep trying to say to them, no, don't. You just hold back. It's okay. Just say, oh, I'm just thinking about it. I'll message you.
My daughter was trying to teach her twin brother that the other day.
Was she?
Yeah.
And?
She was going, she was telling me that she'd said to him, I just told him, you don't have to reply immediately. Just,
that's
you
brilliant.
Can be busy. It's fine. And he's like, oh.
It's like a burning hole in their phone, isn't it?
Turn your notifications off.
Yes, I love it. She's got it. She's got it.
Brilliant.
Once they've clicked, it's great, isn't it? The question is also, can we be non-specific? So I've got this great friend who's really brutal. She's a surgeon, and her approach to everything is really hardcore. And she's very open with her kids about a lot of things, but she draws a line. And she said, my kids have asked me whether I did this with their dad. And I said, that wouldn't be appropriate for me to tell you, but I can tell you what most adults do.
Okay.
Which I thought, that's a nice
kind of
dainty sidestep.
Spread it out, yeah.
It's a dainty sidestep.
Yeah.
It's like, I am not going to tell, because I know I've talked to lots of adults, I've dealt with this, so I'm going to tell you what people do.
Interesting. I'm going to borrow that.
It's a useful one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's useful.
Yeah.
So you can sidestep. and explain that it's not because some things are, come on, that's not really your business. And sometimes some of us have kids who love pressing our buttons.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's not pretend that this doesn't happen. So
yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, I think I've got away lightly. I haven't been asked that much.
Oh, I have.
It may come.
So we've talked about drugs, and then interestingly, they're coming back to the drugs, so it's a catchily named website that I went on to, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is the agency within the US Department of Health Services. So how they put it is they say, don't let your past stop you from talking to your child about underage drinking, for example. If you drank as a teenager, just be honest.
Yeah.
But tell them, I know it was risky.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking clear. I wasn't thinking clearly at the time, and here are the risks.
Yeah, and this is what happened to me, maybe.
And I was lucky.
Yeah.
I was lucky, but you might not be.
Yeah, yeah.
And I look back with horror.
Yeah.
So
and they probably they get a gauge of who we were when we were young, don't they? So if you say something that doesn't ring true, they're going to know. So
yeah. And the problem with giving too much information, just to sort of dwell on that for a minute, is that you risk parentification. That's a word that came up I think in the 60s. And it's this where your kids end up sort of parenting you, where you open up on something that feels really it's too much information, and then the role is flipped. Particularly if you then say, oh, and then I was really upset about it, and then this happened, and you've given them too much information. That you still need to be their parent.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic actually, because you can spread it out kind of to sort of more emotional stuff. Like my kids recently have been asking me about how my parents were with me, and I've been quite honest with them.
Same, very honest.
And that's really helpful and useful. And their grandparents are still alive, and they see them regularly and have a great relationship. But it helps them to understand some of my choices I have with them and how I am. And I think that's really, really useful. But there's still a filter within that as well, because it's their grandparents as well.
I think it's really empowering, because it's also, I will say to them, I think I've been getting this wrong, and here's why.
Yes.
And it's not that, my parents were terrible people. It's just that I had this upbringing, and then I've been trying to do this to fix it, and I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
It's not you, it's actually me, and it's me because of this. And then they can understand, they get depth to human relationships, and they have context, and it's not about black and white, and this person's good and this person's bad, and you're wrong and you're, I think it's really powerful.
It's really powerful, and I can almost see it with them. Like they ask, and it's not just about my childhood, but things I did or things that were happened, and you kind of really see them listening, and they suddenly see you in a different light. It's like when the first time they realize that you are, you're not just their mum, that you maybe have a job or you do other stuff. They kind of oh whoa. It's really good for them.
Yes, it is good for them, and always knowing that you are their parent, so your job is to be their parent. Exactly. But so, for example, telling them the love stories. I've told my girls about my great romances, which happened before not that my husband isn't romantic, but the romances that I had, and the ups and downs, and what I got wrong, and what I learned from them, and all those discussions can really help them think, oh, okay, it's not that easy, and yes, that's fine. I'm getting it wrong. And also that for me, the real relationships didn't happen till way later than a lot of these kids.
No.
So
my tricky conversations with mine have maybe been about their dads.
Yes, and that's tricky. Very hard. And that's have to really put, baby steps around that, I imagine.
And they've asked me some, very honest questions, and I've ended up telling them the truth. And they didn't always like it. But I did it in a way that was, I think, and I'm pretty sure now is good, and it's been fine, and it wasn't such a big thing. But I had to really think about what do I want to answer. So the topic is relevant.
I want to dwell on that, because I think actually when it comes to separations and talking about that stuff, it's very, very hard.
Really hard.
Because I've been in that situation, my husband's been in that situation, and I think every time a question comes up, the answer has to be around how do I demonstrate to my kids that there isn't a right and a wrong, but that people behave in certain ways together and they don't work and it's not good. And I had to set out boundaries. You know, I think it's about how do you solve things that aren't working?
Yeah, it is. But there are actually some questions they can ask that are difficult because they want to know often, not always, but they often want to know, you know, why.
Yes.
Because, you know, for years there's a hope in their heads, isn't there, that, well, maybe this will work out differently in the long run. You know, why? And if there's been, you know, something that has been, you know, really difficult, like, I don't know, infidelity or abuse or, you know, that kind of thing, and they ask you, you know, direct question around it, that's really difficult to navigate.
Very difficult.
To both be honest and not shock them and... to get that balance, and they also have a relationship with the other parent afterwards. All of that is a tricky balance. Very
tricky, and you know, power to you for navigating it because it is really, really hard. And it's never one and done.
No.
You never explain something and then everybody's happy, and you know you're going to have to keep going in. Because what if you explain something? Watch them. Because they'll be taking it in and they may go, oh yeah, and then walk off. Or they may just be thinking, oh, okay. Because every time you tell them something, it's going to shift that needle to their better understanding of something about you. And they may want to come back in again. So letting them know that, you know, it's okay, you can ask more questions if you want.
That's important.
Coming on to the rape experience, you know, that's a proper trauma. And it's interesting because I was listening to John Ronson talking about culture wars, and he interviewed the man who wrote, the Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, that was a bestseller during lockdown. And the word trauma has become used in so many scenarios that Van der Kolk is horrified by, because he says it's really demeaning to the people who've genuinely suffered, you know, rape or been through a war zone, or you know, it's kind of, we have to be careful with the use of these words.
We have to just be clear how we define it.
Correct, yeah. And but that really is trauma that this person's gone through. And the thing about trauma is treatment doesn't make it go away. It just makes you reach a place where your trauma no longer dominates your life. And it's incredible. This woman has talked about it publicly. It's out there. I actually found another writer who talked about her own situation, because she was raped and then they didn't find the person. And she moved countries, she remarried, she's very happy, she's got kids. One was 12, another was younger. And then suddenly they contacted her and said, we found your rapist via DNA. Oof. And she ended up having to go through the entire court case with her family set up the way it was. Yes. And as you can imagine, that will have dragged up every single thing that she'd struggled with in the past that she probably didn't want to have to deal with again, but she did.
Gosh.
And I think what's really important is this kind of the sharing information can't be to alleviate your own distress. So you have to have dealt with it yourself before you can start talking about those sorts of things to a child or one of your children.
As much as you can.
Yes. And this particular woman said that, you know, things actually were happening around them where she was having to go to court cases. They were having to cancel things. They had to stop going to certain places. And she realised that the way to frame it was to talk about the positives of it. So, for example, with her situation was, yes, a bad thing happened, but look at what we're doing. Look at how good stuff happens. And I think, she said 2 years later, when her son was 14, after the case, after he was convicted, her son asked her for more details. And it wasn't about the crime. It was about the relationships and how it had impacted their life. And she was honest with him and told him. And he said he was very grateful that she waited because it would have been harder when he was younger. So that's a really interesting point. Interesting. Again, he was ready because he asked her.
And maybe, I was going to say, going back to your original thing, have they asked you?
Did they ask you?
Why are you giving this information?
And then if you've got something really traumatic like that in your past, I would always frame it in in a way like, yes, this happened, but here I am surviving.
Yeah.
Here I've made this for myself. This is because we are products of everything that has happened to us.
Yeah, and children worry, don't they? They worry.
Yes.
You know, they want to keep us safe as well. They want us to be safe so that we can be there for them.
Yes.
Tricky balance.
Yes. So I think in her situation, wait until they come to you to ask about it.
If you can,
would,
I guess sometimes that's not possible, but yeah, if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is whatever you choose to tell your child, explain your current values, your rules, your goals, you know, in context so that it's a chance to reinforce, here's how I really think now as a person who's grown up, an adult, you know. And so, yes, okay, I might have done this, that and that when I was a kid, but I didn't have those values then. Now I know. Yeah. I'm not stupid anymore. I'm not. Right?
And I think a lot of the questions they ask, and I think for my kids anyway, is curiosity. It's like, they want to know who we are.
Yes.
What did you used to be like? It's like looking at old photos, isn't it? Well, oh my God, look at your hair. And, you know, what did you used to do? What were your hobbies? Like, who were you before you became my boring old mum?
It adds depth to their story.
Yeah.
It makes them something. They're like, oh, because my kids love telling people I was born in Africa. You know, they sort of, I think I'm a something % African. And I said, no, you're not. Because
sorry.
But when they were young, it was really a big thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, the experiences I've had have informed the world and the way that I've seen the world. And so, it gives depth to the family history and the story.
It's interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah. So that's it. If you found this useful, please send it to at least one person or share it on social media. We love reviews.
We
love reviews. We love hearing from you. We read everything. We do actually have reviews, but we'll do that next time. If you suggest an idea, we're going to cover it, I promise.
Well, probably.
Eventually. I mean, this lady contacted us quite some time ago, so I'm very, very sorry, but here it is.
Yeah. But weird suggestions we might not do.
No, oh God, no.
Like, we're not going to do everything.
No, we're not. No. I mean, it has to be something that we care about.
Something we like.
Actually, it's something I care about or we care about, right?
Yeah,
we're not going to talk
I think that's
about
fair
this.
enough.
You can find our old episodes on www.teenagersuntangled.com and also sign up for my newsletter there. Susie, you've been doing some excellent reels on social media.
Thank you very much. They're really fun.
They're fun.
It's really fun to do.
They're fun to watch. You're doing more with businesses as well. So if you want
to workshops in businesses and companies, courses, it's really fun.
Yes. So if you need her skills in any way, either for you or for your business, you can reach her at
www.amindful-life.co.uk.
Don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss a thing. And a big hug from us.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.